Okay, so I'm really excited. This is a series that I've been wanting to do for a while, but I didn't know how to do it. It's inspired by Bailey Zarian's Murder, Mystery, and Makeup Mondays, but I did not want to copy her Murder, Mystery, and Makeup Mondays, obviously, because I just don't think that that's like a cool thing to do. So instead, I thought that I would do something called Underwhelming Makeup and Unsolved Mysteries. And I'm going to try my best in this series to avoid talking about murder in general and stick to more broad mysteries. And this is going to be a bit more relaxed than my true crime videos, and there is a script, but I'm going to try to keep it a lot more organic. And much like Bailey, I don't plan on talking about the makeup I'm using, I just plan on like going with it. So I'm not going to dilly-dally, I'm going to get started. And this setup, I'm not sure, I need to work on my background and all that stuff in this room in particular, but yeah, I don't know, I don't have anything else to say, so I'm gonna go ahead and start putting stuff on my face. I will try to remember to link stuff that I use. Also, I'm still working on my setup, so my mirror is over here, so I'm gonna try not to, I don't know, I'll try to figure it out. I'll probably use a handheld mirror for some parts, but for now, that's what we're doing. So I need a napkin. First off, if you're new here, my name's Allie. Welcome. Everyone is welcome here. So for my inaugural Underwhelming Makeup and Unsolved Mysteries, I wanted to do kind of a controversial case because, and again, I didn't want to do a murder. I wanted to do something that was like an unsolved phenomenon that possibly may or may not be a crime. So today we are going to discuss Malaysia Flight 370. Now, a lot of you may have heard about this. It happened on March 8th in 2014. It was a flight going from Kuala Lumpur International Airport in Malaysia to the Beijing International Airport. So it was an international flight, and most of the people on the flight were of Chinese descent. It last communicated with aircraft control 38 minutes after takeoff, when it was flying over the South China Sea. And even though it was lost from air traffic control, it was still being monitored by a military satellite for an hour after that. I'm doing my brows, and I'm trying a new brow product, and I hope that I can like, I know I hate this background as well. And it deviated from its original flight plan. And I don't know what the original flight plan actually was. I wasn't able to find that information, but it ended up crossing the Malaysia Peninsula and going over the Andaman Sea, and it killed presumably 227 passengers and 12 crew members, making it, up until the flight that was shot down in Ukraine, it was the deadliest airplane crash in history. Sorry, this is like really difficult. The plane itself was a Boeing 777, which not to be confused with Boeing 337s, which were the ones that were grounded in March of 2019, and eventually they were ungrounded. The airplane itself is known to be like a reliable aircraft, just in general. But the investigation into the disappearance was just a mess from the start. The Malaysian police was known for having like a ton of corruption in its ranks, and they basically refused to release information to the Chinese citizens and officials. And like I mentioned before, most of the people on the aircraft were of Chinese descent. This was obviously incredibly frustrating to family members and to Chinese officials, and it seemed as if they were attempting to just cover up whatever happened in the best way that they could. It did end up being the most expensive search in history, and part of that was because of where the perception of the crash site should be. Initially, they were focused on, like I said, the South China Sea and the Andaman Sea, until they finally concluded that it probably went down somewhere in the Indian Ocean. And this was confirmed by satellite communication with Inmarsat, a satellite company which is based in London, but it's in that vicinity. And I can't even begin to explain to you how difficult an ocean search would be, like a deep underwater ocean search, which is essentially what this was. Because if you think about the ocean and how vast it is, it's not even like trying to find a needle in a haystack. It's like trying to find a dust mite in a cornfield. It's like nearly, and my hands are so slippery, it's nearly impossible to find things once they've gone into the ocean. Like, even if you do have an idea of where something could be, they're as good as they're gonna get. I don't know. I'm trying, like I said, I'm trying a new brow product. There have been 28 total Boeing 777 accidents. There were 7 hull losses, 5 in the sky and 2 of them were on the ground, and 3 hijackings. And I mean, if you believe in that type of thing, it could just be that Boeing 777s are just like cursed aircrafts or something. Do I believe that? I don't know, you know? It could be. Like I said, we think of Boeings as not safe. I don't know about you, but like for a while, anytime I was on a plane, I would check and make sure it wasn't a Boeing 377 or 337 or whatever the heck, because I didn't want to fly on one. And after this incident, I did not want to fly on Boeing 777s and almost had a panic attack on a flight one time because I was on a Boeing 777 and it freaked me out. But anyway, it turned out to be okay, obviously. The day of the disappearance, the passenger manifesto was released to the public, and it was later modified because two of the passengers had falsified passports. These passengers were Iranian. We'll get into more of that because it didn't, while there has been speculation about these passengers, we'll get into it, but I just want to make it clear that there's a lot of different reasons why someone could have a false passport that we'll get into. The pilot in command was 53-year-old Captain Zahari Ahmad Shan. He was known he was really good at flying 777s, 337s, 737s, and he was also a flight instructor. He had 18,365 flight hours up until that flight. And he was the one that was in charge that day. There was a second pilot in training that day because most flights have at least 2 pilots. His name was Abdul Hamid, and he was only 27, and this flight was actually supposed to be his last training flight before he was officially able to be, I guess, a main pilot or out of training or whatever. And then he would have his evaluation. He had 2,763 hours of flight experience. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shan, and for the sake of this, I'll just call him Captain Zahari. He became a huge topic of discussion with armchair detectives almost from the start, but especially now. And the sad part to me is that we'll get into the evidence of why people think that he could have somehow been to blame, but there's a lot of reasons outside of what gossip magazines were putting out. And unfortunately, gossip magazines went wild with information about him, alleging that somehow his behavior before the crash, or that he had depression or something like that, was the reason that he crashed this flight. And it's just, I found the articles about him kind of disgusting, to be completely honest. And mostly because it didn't seem as if the articles were relying on like any sort of evidence in order to make their point. It was just very much kind of like for like shock value more than anything. The only thing that we know for sure, the facts, are he actually had the flight plan that they ended up taking, not the original flight plan that they should have taken, but the flight plan that they did take was logged in his at-home flight simulator. It's not uncommon for pilots with that type of experience to have their own flight simulators, because it's a great way for them to practice just flying in general. You obviously want a pilot that knows how to fly, and this is a good way to do it without, any passengers or anything. I want to mention that the FBI has not said that he is the one that crashed the aircraft or is the reason that the aircraft crashed. I will admit that it's odd that because they didn't follow the original flight plan, that this flight plan was logged on his home computer or flight log simulator. But at the same time, I messed up. It's possible that he was trying to go through every possible scenario for something bad that could happen, which, again, that's what you want out of a pilot. Ultimately, you want them to be able to prepare for a bad situation. So, don't know if that's pertinent, but it was released to the public because ultimately the FBI did go through financial records and things like that for every passenger and every crew member. On an episode of 60 Minutes Australia, experts alleged that this was his way of committing suicide. And the biggest piece of evidence that they had was the fact that the plane dipped near Penang, did like a turn, which indicates that he was kind of like saying goodbye. This pencil is like not sharp at all. I don't know where my sharpener is, so we're just gonna pretend that I didn't even do that. But yeah, investigators were trying to use, these experts were using that as proof that this was his way of saying goodbye after committing suicide. There was also some evidence that his wife may have been leaving him, but it's very, very uncommon for people to commit suicide in such a very big way. Most of the time when people are suicidal or they're depressed, they aren't going to pre-plan a suicide that would also end up killing so many people. Just because it's uncommon doesn't make it impossible, but it's very, very uncommon for that to happen. And I'll get into the specifics, but basically their theory is he depressurized the plane, causing everyone to pass out. He dipped to see his town, and then they all died. So speaking of suicide, my cat just tried to kill himself, so there's that. Are you okay? And he's gonna try it again, so that's okay. Plain person, so I do not know the technical jargon for all this. Basically the plane could have taken two routes. Could have gone north or it could have gone south, and we know for certain, based on the Doppler blings, that it went south. It had been speculated that it was possible the plane was in autopilot, and it's possible because the plane for a while did not move, did not dip, did not do anything. It's impossible that while it was an autopilot, this foundation I know is like, I did self-tan, it just hasn't fully developed yet, so. And it was possible that everyone lost oxygen, everyone passed out and kind of died peacefully after the plane like ran out of gas and crashed. But it doesn't seem like the plane had any like catastrophic failure that would indicate like something happened, like a bomb or something like that. It was nighttime, and on nighttime red eyes like this that are so long, it isn't uncommon for crew members to sleep. Not all of them, obviously, but it wouldn't be uncalled for like one of the pilots to go to sleep. So someone like, I don't know, the pilot in training to go to sleep while Zahari was controlling the plane. I know this is like not the right shade. It matches my arm, but it doesn't match my neck. So I know this is looking very problematic, and I'm not trying to. This does give further information that more than likely Zahari was involved in some way. And I say this because generally speaking, you wouldn't necessarily let the pilot in training be the one to fly the plane while the person in charge is sleeping. You may allow them to take a break, but it's pretty unlikely that that would happen. He could have programmed the flight path, put it on autopilot, and then passed out with everyone else while the plane was depressurizing, and then just kind of let it fly until it either ran out of gas or had some sort of electrical failure, like whatever the issue was. There is also a theory that he flew above 40,000 feet. And if he did that, what would happen is, because of the G-forces of flying that high, everyone would be pinned to their seat and they would probably pass out from the force. But pilots in the cockpit do have access to these special oxygen things that are better than what you would get on a plane. And the reason is because if someone hijacks the plane or does something like that, does anything like that, you want the pilot to have access to a fail-safe kind of measure. This would have also explained why like flight attendants didn't get up to like stop him if they thought that something had happened or called for help or anything like that. And presumably if they were asleep, they may not even have noticed. So what would have happened is they would have flown straight up, and then there is evidence that after 6 hours a steep descent was detected, and it was so steep and so fast that the plane basically would have blown up. It would have started shedding pieces of itself off, and then it was obviously not a planned water landing, because when you water land, you don't literally plane was like this. You don't generally do that. Now, this doesn't explain why the plane was in a straight line for so long, and I could not find clarification on that, whether it was like, when they said the plane was in a straight line, does that mean that it descended up and then it came back after everyone had passed out, went into a straight line, and then steeply descended? Or does that mean that it was in a straight line until it went up and then went straight down? I can't answer that, but pretty much all of those would lend itself to Zahari himself having something to do, whether it was him putting on his little mask thingy and going straight up into the air. They're going straight up into the air, coming back down, whatever it is. He obviously died with them. We just don't know if he passed out with everyone else or what. So anyway, I'm gonna stop saying the same thing over and over again because that's really annoying, and editing me is gonna be like, can you shut the fuck up, please? The best way to figure this out would have been to find the plane pretty soon after the incident occurred. But there was a man who actually took it upon himself to try to find debris from the plane, because everyone was so heavily focused on underwater searching. And like I mentioned, underwater searching is like nearly impossible to do. It's really, really difficult. So this man named Blaine Gibson began to travel and build contacts with people from different countries in order to try and find debris that had washed up on the beach. And in an effort to do this, he was hoping that they could use information about the tides and whatever to find out where the debris was coming from and hopefully locate the plane. While that has not happened yet and it hasn't led to rubble, he is still really hopeful. And honestly, I think his method is a lot more sound than underwater searching, just based on everything that I've read about underwater searches. And it's important to mention that, like, underwater searching does not have limits. There is more underwater, deep sea stuff than there is like land or even like space. I don't know if you've ever heard people say that like underwater searching is almost scarier than like space. So there have been 3 official investigations. The first was an Australia deep diving team. That was concluded in 2018 with no results. The next was a American company called Ocean Infinity. They were a no find, no fee company, which means exactly what it sounds like. If they don't find anything, they don't charge you. They were hired by the Malaysian government, and that was also closed. So lastly, the Malaysia police did their own investigation. And this investigation has basically focused on what they could find out about the passengers and the crew of Flight 370. And it is important to note that it has been said that they did not have the best intentions going into this investigation, because from the start it always seemed like they were intending to cover it up the best that they could. And it's not that they were trying to cover up something they already knew. It was that they were trying to cover up the fact that they didn't know much, which does happen. I know that sounds kind of weird to some people, but it is true that many times stuff like this, like, they will attempt to cover up things that they don't know and cover up the fact that they don't know it. So a lot of what they've done has been pretty performative in terms of trying to find out information. There have been a number of eyewitness accounts that have claimed to see the aircraft, that have claimed to see Zahari himself. There was a tarot reader that claimed she saw the flight when it was coming down. There's a guy that claims you can find the remains if you go on Google Earth and you zoom in, but he refuses to say the coordinates. Someone says that you can see it on Google Earth in the jungle. There's even reports that they've found Zahari in a hospital and he doesn't remember who he is, and so that's why we've never been able to find this information, because he doesn't know who he is. He has like amnesia. There's even a theory that, I don't know how long this hasn't been reporting. There was even reports that the flight plan was faked. So it could have been flying towards Kazakhstan. That's like a huge theory that like they're looking in the wrong place to begin with. Most of these are just conspiracy theories, and if you've watched any of my videos, you probably know that I'm not a big conspiracy theory fan in general. So I am less inclined to believe any sort of conspiracy theories. The most plausible event, of course, is that it happened, there was some sort of event caused by someone on the plane, and there was also theories of a terrorist attack. And I'm sure you know where this is going, and it's because there were 2 Iranians on board the flight who had falsified documents. So initially on the initial manifesto, I think it was that they were Italian and Norwegian or something like that. And the custom officials obviously received a lot of backlash for this because they allowed them on the plane with falsified documents. The FBI, however, has said that they believe that they're refugees. So that would explain why they had falsified documents and why they were able to get through customs. I will say that the way that they bought their flights, it was like one of them called and bought it over the phone and one of them paid cash or something like that. So it wasn't your typical way of you think of purchasing a flight. But I didn't want to ignore this theory because it is definitely based in like some Islamophobic origins. And I did want to mention it because it is something that's heavily discussed, but in my opinion, the evidence does not lend itself to some sort of terrorist attack or anything like that. While I'm not a fan of conspiracy theories, it's obvious to me that the Malaysian government like wants this to go away. And in my opinion, they've made very little effort to actually figure out what's going on or even make this investigation accessible to other people who do want to find out what's going on or what really happened. And even while like the flight was kind of like running rogue and like not following the flight plan, the Air Force just like ignored the pings that it was getting that like this plane was like in the wrong place. And they said it was because since it wasn't like attacking them, basically it was just like a blip, that they don't like generally investigate stuff like that. But that just seems so strange to me, because think of what happened on the Ukraine flight. When they were flying over Ukraine, they were shot down. And that was like a planned flight plan, and yet they weren't, you know what I mean? So that just seems odd that they were pretty much ignored. I'm gonna put on my lipstick and put on my mascara and close out this video, because I do need to fix my hair as well, but it's still air drying, so I might not even really fix it, but give me just one sec. Okay, I'm just gonna have hippie here because I don't feel like fixing it at the moment. But as far as like what I think happened, I obviously don't think that this is like some big conspiracy theory, and I actually don't think that it was like orchestrated by the Malaysian government. So I don't want anyone to think that like I'm sitting here saying that like the Malaysian government like did this whole thing. That isn't what I'm saying at all. But I just feel like they didn't really make a big effort or like a big push to find out what happened, because then they would probably have to take responsibility for, you know, whatever it is, like whether they ignored signs that Zahari was mentally unstable and maybe shouldn't have been flying the plane that day, or whether it was or ignoring the blips on the radar when they, you know, shouldn't have, or whatever. But I definitely like videos like this because I don't have a strong opinion. I think most of you knew and could tell, like when I did like Maura Murray, I had a very strong opinion of what I thought happened. But with JonBenet, I didn't. And that's kind of what I like, because I feel like it kind of gives us freedom to like talk about it in the comments. So like, please do that. I do want to say that like, part of me is like, if it was a suicide, why wasn't there a suicide note? But on the other hand, it is possible that maybe it's on the black box, which at this point we'll never find because it doesn't save things like that. There's this misconception that like the black box will tell you everything, and that's like not really true. But you know, maybe he recorded it somewhere and it's on that plane and it'll be with the remains of the plane, but we'll never know until we find the debris or if it washes up or whatever. But to me, that just seems so risky for him to not leave some sort of note. And they did go through, like I said, everyone's laptops and computers, finances, all that stuff. There was a theory that he had money problems, but I couldn't like confirm or deny this. But even if there was, I don't know. I definitely think like while I was doing this research, like when I first started, I definitely didn't think he did it. But the more I dug into it, the more that I thought he did. So I don't know. Tell me what you guys think in the comments, and tell me what other mysteries you want. Like I said, I'm going to try to avoid murders on here. So, you know, I would love to stick with things like that could be conspiracy theories or maybe just like controversial things. So like let me know. And when I say lighthearted, like I don't mean like that this is lighthearted. Obviously people died and that's like so sad. When I focus on my true crime videos, I like to focus on just the victims and talk about it in that way. So yeah, I've obviously already done Dyatlev's Pass. I've already done Maura Murray. And I don't know what I want to do next, but if you have any ideas, please let me know. There's so many that I could do, but right now I'm drawing a blank. Let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!